Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the session. So tonight we're going to talk about how to land a data scientist job. We're going to share some alumni success stories, and you get to talk with WeCloudData's data scientist bootcamp alumni. So we're quite excited about this event. Before we get started, just a quick shout out to WeCloudData's Discord channel, and also the free data science course we've launched in the last few months. So if you'd like to stay connected, get access to the recordings of our workshops and events, you can click on the link to join our Discord channel. I believe Adam has shared that links in the Zoom chat already. And last month we launched something called WeCloud Open. So that's the open workshop and open course we are going to release in the next few months. So right now we have free SQL and free Python courses. So if you're interested in getting into data science, definitely check out the course. It's very hands-on and has a lot of great and useful resources. Just so you know, we're also launching the new cohorts of our data science bootcamp on the West Coast and the East Coast as well. Next cohorts will be available at the end of May. So if you're interested in either doing a full-time or part-time program, you know where to find us. With WeCloudData, we have two different options. Some of the alumni today, I believe they're in the full-time program. So the full-time bootcamp is a 3 months long intensive program. So you study Monday to Friday. We help students build portfolios. We also offer students the opportunity to work on real industry projects. And then we can help the student connect with the industry, professionals and hiring companies. And we have pretty good success rate in this program. And also last year we added one-on-one career mentorship services to the bootcamp students. So after the 3 months bootcamp, you also get to work with a mentor from the industry for 6 months, and the mentors will be helping you with your job search. In terms of the overall bootcamp experience, and we'll definitely let our alumni talk about their experience as well. In terms of the curriculum, we cover SQL and Python from scratch. And then we move on to data science with Python. We cover machine learning, and then we also put quite a bit of effort on big data, Amazon Web Services, and Spark as well. And along the way, student will be able to complete 3 to 4, end-to-end projects. And after graduation, the students in the full-time program will be working on the real company projects while they're receiving the one-on-one career mentoring. But we keep it flexible, so the career mentoring can kick off when the student feel that they're ready for job search, because sometimes students will be busy with their portfolio project building or working on real client project. So some of them will want to wait a little bit, before they start to do a job search. And we also have a part-time program. So the difference between the full-time and part-time is that the part-time program is created for working professionals who have a full-time job. So you can't really do this on a full-time basis. So the part-time students will be spending about 10 hours per week in lectures and labs. They also get to build portfolio project. The duration is longer, of course, because you're not studying full-time, and student has the option to work on real client project, which is a separate package as well. And the data science mentorship is also included as part of the bootcamp package. All right, I would like to quickly introduce our panelists tonight. We have 3 panelists. They all graduated from our data science bootcamp. I think they got into the job, this data science industry during the pandemic. So we have Rochita, who is currently working as a data scientist at a company called Voices. And we have Daniel Lee, who's currently the manager of data science team at RBC. And we have Win Tao, who previously worked as a data scientist at Statistics Canada, and now he's a data scientist at Scotiabank. And Win Tao also, teach with WeCloudData as well. So I would like to welcome all the panelists, and it's great to see you guys again. And yeah, I'll let you guys, do self-introduction, but we're very excited about this session. So let's get started. Tell us about your current job. Who would like to go first? Or you want me to pick?
Sure. Yeah, I can go first. Nice to meet everyone. I'm Rochita, and I was part of the data science bootcamp last year. So it was a Jan to April cohort. And I was a full-time data science student, and I'm based out of Vancouver, so I'm on the West Coast, but I took the course in terms of the Eastern Standard Timing. Currently, I work as a data scientist at Voices. It's a company it's basically an online marketplace for voiceover work. So it's a pretty interesting and niche industry segment. So any advertisement that you see on TV, online, even on company websites, the videos that you see, the audio, the voice over work for it, the talents are matched on our platform. So companies typically post jobs, and we have over 2 million talent base, and we match them and kind of, that's the industry or the segment the company works in. And we provide the service in over 160 different languages and countries. And like I mentioned, we have over 2 million voiceover talents registered on our platform. As a data scientist, I get to work on like the job recommendation engine and spam project. So when a job gets posted on our platform, we kind of want to vet it and see if it's a spam posting or it has to be auto approved. And then from there, we build the recommendation system in order to match the best voiceover talents for each job posting. So those are some of the aspects I work on. But apart from that, the rest of my team members, they work on other data science aspects, such as there's also the project marketplace available on our website. So there is a lot that you can do in terms of search algorithms. When someone searches by certain keywords, which are the talents that need to be prioritized first, for example. And something interesting that we are also looking into is voice AI. So it is possible to create a voice clone of a talent. And then, on the text that you are generating, there's a synthetic AI voice clone that's, generating the audio. So those are some interesting segments that we, R&D projects that we're also looking into. Apart from that, even at the time of job posting, we can build recommendation systems for pricing, letting clients know what's the best price for them to post the job, how many responses they are likely to receive at the time of job posting based on the budget ranges that they're selecting. So definitely a lot of scope for interesting data science projects across the board. And I'm happy to talk to you about my, about what I do more in depth during today's meeting. Yeah, that's it for me.
That's awesome. Thanks, Roshida. I think your job sounds very interesting. So would love to hear more about it later. Daniel, you would like to want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm very happy to see Shala and Adam again. Thanks for inviting me. So like basically my current job is just like risk management for credit cards. So I manage credit card strategy. For example, like I take care of the pre-approved credit cards. So what I do is I use data analytics to adjust and monitor the credit strategies. So for example, using like customer data, maybe I can find out that I can segment customer purchasing behavior into one segment that generates a lot of revenue, the other segment will generate fewer revenue, and then I'll be able to kind of segment each customer into different segments depending on their traits and purchasing behaviors. And then we would offer them maybe different limits, different interest rates, things like that. So what I do is a little bit different than Rochita. I think she does more on like the modeling side of data science. I am more towards the analytical side of the data science. So not a lot of like hardcore coding and building machine learning models, but more of just making the business sense out of data. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. And Wintel, how about you?
Hey everyone. First of all, thanks for inviting, and very glad to come back and share my experience. Yeah, as Shawat said, I was in WeCloudData in the year 2021. I graduated from at around October or November, and yeah, just recently joined Scotiabank 7 or 8 months ago. And my current job basically is helping and maintaining the investment products in Scotiabanks. And similar to what Daniel doing, we are mostly focused on the analytics side to tracking customer behavior and a campaign outcome to change using the outcome of the analytics work to change our strategy to maintain the volume and margin for the product, as well as a lot of reporting work. I think one of the important goal for our job is to present the analytics result to the business team in order to guide them to make the decisions for the next period of champion or whatever promotions. Also collaborating with other teams, like if you're familiar, like Scotiabank, there's a Simplus point or a Simplus promotions, right? So there's a different kind of groups working together to achieve the growth for in the business. Yeah, thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Rintal, and thanks everyone for doing the self-introduction. I've prepared quite a few questions, and they'll basically follow your bootcamp journey. So why don't we get started from like the research you've done and your decision-making process. Oh, before that, there's one more question. I think we actually had an event a few days ago discussing like the data scientist or data science learning path. We talked about many tools and skills one need to learn and grasp in order to get into data science. We'll talk about your bootcamp experience later as well. Can you maybe just briefly tell us like the kind of tools and skills you apply in your daily work? Can be like whatever data science packages and tools you use.
Yeah, for my work, pretty standard set of tools. Use a lot of SQL just to build queries, get the data that I need for my tasks. Sometimes use Tableau for visualization. Company uses AWS a lot. Some of our models are deployed using AWS, while some others, because of are like on PERM models. So in terms of AWS, we use like Redshift, SageMaker, Lambda, CloudWatch, so a host of different AWS-based services. And for my usual programming, I mostly just use Python and then work on like AWS EC2 instances and just Jupyter-based interface. So a lot of the skills that I do use in my job were also covered as part of the bootcamp. So even when I was part of the Beam Data, so kind of use similar set of software and tools. I think so they're kind of pretty standard across the field in terms of the tools that you do use. I know that I'm comfortable with Python, so I use it pretty all the time, but then there are other team members that also used R as the major programming language, so it kind of depends what you're more comfortable in, but the basic concepts kind of remain the same.
For me, it's a lot simpler. We usually use SQL to like pull the data, and a lot of team members use SAS. I think the banking industry use a lot of SAS to pull data and do analytics. But for my team, we're trying to shift from SAS to Python. So personally, I don't know how to use SAS, but I'm doing okay just because I use Python every day, especially the pandas package for data analytics, machine learning, modeling, and I use matplotlib to do visualizations. Yeah, so I guess SQL and Python.
Same to me. SQL and Python are both everyday tools. basically SQL is to use to extract data from different databases in the banking, and Python gonna do some analytics work to aggregate the data and show the result. So for the visualization, we actually just talked about Plotly last week. It's a kind of a popular tool that you use to visualize the data in Python, and this is what we also learned in the WeCloudData as well. So yeah, I just feel like quite useful that what I learned in the WeCloudData used in the real work. And also a little bit of PySpark is necessary in the daily work. And yeah, that's probably it.
Cool. Well, it looks like the common theme here is SQL and Python. So definitely you need to put your effort into learning these skills. And Roshida also mentioned that some team members in her company uses R. I'm just curious, when those R users, do they also work with Python, or your company gives them the flexibility just to purely focus on R and SQL?
So I think it's just like a personal preference. So so they kind of just write their just use our studio for writing out the queries and also building basic ML models using R. But then, yeah, I think even there's just even they, like the ones that do use R, when they have to like expand to like proper machine learning, they do, or it's easier to automate things in Python. So at the end of the day, it's like a personal preference, but based on the tasks, sometimes they do crossover and use Python depending on what they want to do.
Daniel and Wintel, you guys work for banks, and Daniel mentioned like team members knowing SAS. I'm just curious, like when you guys make hiring decisions, are you still looking for people who specialize in SAS, or you just start to, since you mentioned like, I think all the banks are migrating, onto Python and open source. So do you still focus on hiring SAS talent, or I guess the question is, for someone who is just trying to get into this industry, should they just focus on Python, or if they would like to work in the banks, do they still need to learn SAS?
Personally, I don't think you need to learn SAS, because we've made a few new hires, not in my team, but like neighbor teams, and they don't know how to use SAS. And I haven't touched SAS in my day-to-day activities. I might encounter some databases where I need to use SAS code to extract data, but those code are already prepared by seniors or whoever did it. So we just run the code, that's it. You don't really have to know how to use it. But if you work in the banking industry, there might be some really niche positions that that SAS would be a requirement. So when I look for jobs and I did the job search, I did encounter some positions where they specifically ask for SAS, but definitely SAS is no longer like a really popular thing anymore. And I think most of the teams are shifting towards Python.
Yeah, I agree with Daniel. I think the trend is definitely moving to Python and to moving to the cloud. Some of the new hires in our big group, I think most of them don't know SAS at all, or their SAS is not as good as their Python. I think the reason why in our group someone still talking about SAS is some old programs like production jobs. Those script is written in SAS. So, but as long as you know how to run it, it should be fine. And I know for a truth that a lot of jobs are moving to Python script now. So yeah, I think that's the trend for now.
Thanks. There are actually also two questions from the audience. Eric was asking, what about PowerBI and Tableau? No use at all for DA. I think you guys all work as data scientists, but would you like to comment on Power BI and Tableau?
Yeah, so I've also, I got an interview with another company and they specifically asked for Tableau, but I just told them that I have like just basic knowledge and they say it's good enough. Tableau is not that complicated. And I think WeCloudData's data science bootcamp covers Tableau. I think that's good enough for basic Tableau. Power BI we never used. And to be honest, like for visualizations, usually use it for PowerPoint presentations. And as long as you can put a graph on there, it's okay. So if you use Excel, use Tableau, use the Python packages, it's fine. There's no specific requirement as long as you have like a visualization to show.
Yeah, so same at my company, like we have like a dedicated team member that handles all of the Tableau requests. So these are usually for business reporting sessions. So, sometimes product managers or like sales team, they might come up with like ad hoc requests asking for dashboards as part of their usual presentations. So as part of a data analyst or analytics position would be useful to know how to build Tableau, and then the user interface is pretty easy. So as long as with practice you can try to build more complex dashboards going forward. But in terms of like the ML models that we put into productions, typically as part of when a model goes into production or when we make any changes to existing models in production, we also have to work either with like an analyst and put together certain analysis that we track over time just to see and monitor dashboard health, monitor the model health. So sometimes we also need to build Tableau dashboard just to monitor and see how our model is performing in production. So I think that's where Tableau is also useful for data science specifically. And then as part of data science, we also run like A/B testing. So even when we do push changes in production, we would implement it for like a small proportion of, instead of, across all the user base. So for monitoring how the variants are performing, again, we might use something like Tableau, and then it's used for, decision making towards the end.
And just to elaborate on Larry's question, personally, I think Tableau is not that hard to learn. And I don't think there are a lot of jobs that specifically wants you to be a master in Tableau. So I think like if you just spend like maybe like a week, you would have enough knowledge to handle the day-to-day Tableau tasks. Yeah, so it's not that much of a big deal.
Yeah, I agree, and I believe there are gonna be some positions in the bank that use a lot of Tableau to make dashboards, but not in our team. I think Tableau or Power BI. I'm pretty familiar with both tools, but most of the cases they are good at dealing with clean data and making a nicely looking dashboard that you could present to on website or a place for people to visualize the trend or whatever you want. But actually, I think most of the time, the difficult part is to how to clean the data, extract the data, and aggregate the way that the business teams want. So Tableau is something that Python is more good with, not Tableau. Tableau is more like a tool to visualize, but not a good tool to clean the data and do the aggregations. So if you're only looking at to become a data analytics, I believe there are going to be some positions in the bank that doing Tableau or Power BI dashboard every day, but at least not in our group.
Right, I agree. I think there was a good point made. So if you are doing data science and data analytics, a lot of times, like, depending on like, who you are serving, right? If the goal is to do ad hoc analytics, you would like to gain some insight. Most of the time, I think data scientists will just go with whatever that's convenient for them. If you prefer to use Python for visualization, great. But I use Excel a lot because it's just easy. You dump the data into Excel and you can just create some images, plots and charts for your presentation, right? Sometimes it's not worth it to spend the time on building a Tableau dashboard. But if the use case here is that to build a business dashboard that keeps track of the business metrics, and it's going to be consumed by a lot of business users, then it's worth the time. to build a dashboard, and most likely it's going to be the BI analyst or data analyst who's building those who are building those dashboards. And Tableau is just one of those tools. Power BI is also quite popular nowadays. There's another question from Larry. So how much statistics do you need, or use on a day-to-day basis? You can tell you used to work for Statistics Canada. How much stats do you use as a data scientist there?
I'm not very sure about what do you mean by how much statistic. Like, do you the knowledge of, like, if you're doing mean or a standard deviation calculation, do you consider as a statics you're using every day? Like, I think most of the cases you're doing some I don't even call it statics, it's just like a simple math calculation that you need to do every day, that you need to know how to get the average numbers, or how to plot a sales trend to knowing like how much the growth or how much declines, something like that. But for most of the cases, I don't think that involve too many high level statistic analytics every day.
Yeah, so I think like if you're more on the analytical side, you just have to know like the really basics, like standard deviation, mean distribution, things like that. But if you want to really get into like the modeling team and the machine learning team, I think you will have to learn more. For example, like, if given like a machine learning model, for example, logistic regression, there might be many hyperparameters that you need to tune. You need to really know what they mean. So when you're tuning them, you have that stat sense on like what are they actually doing, rather than just knowing like the standard deviation and mean. Yeah. So you need to know more if you're more into like the modeling side. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks. Well, let's move on to the next question. We're going to talk about your bootcamp experience. So first question is, why did you choose a bootcamp over many other options, such as online courses or master's degree in data science and data analytics? Or maybe you guys have done some like online courses before you joined the bootcamp. But would you mind sharing that experience?
Yeah, so I can go first. So for me, I basically chose WeCloudData because I was kind of looking to transition into the industry, working as a data scientist in a relatively short period of time. So I didn't really want to go back to school for an extended period of time, and I already have a master's. So that was one reason, and specifically WeCloudData because I could see that the teaching that pattern for WeCloudData, it's more so practical. Basically, it's aligned with the day-to-day work you might do working in the industry, more so than the theoretical approach that a university-based course would take. So that's something that I wanted exposure to. They do provide real-time project experience with through Beam Data. So that was another point why I ended up choosing WeCloudData for the bootcamp program. And apart from that, they also signed like a mentor. So my mentor, I feel, was pretty instrumental in kind of coaching me and how to prepare my resume. At the time I was applying for jobs, and also I did like mock interviews, both soft skill based as well as technical programming interviews with them. So I felt like there were a lot of extra benefits that came with the bootcamp, and the time period for making the transition were like the reasons I ended up choosing this over other options available.
Yeah, so I think there's just basically like two most important points. The first one is that the bootcamp will offer you more practical skills, while the master's degree might be more theory focused. So if you want to get like a job quickly, a bootcamp is a better choice. Also, the second thing is that bootcamps are less expensive than master's degree, which is also something that we should consider. Yeah, I think those are the two most important points.
For my case, the only reason to driven me to the bootcamp is just get a shorter learning time, so I don't have to spend a lot of time in for a master degree since I already have one. And for my situation, I was actually working full-timely when I was learning, so I don't want to quit my previous job. So because I was back then, I was not very confident to make a career switch. Since I was in working in another industry, I was an engineer before, so I was not very confident to make the career switch, like since I have not known anyone who did that before. So master is not very feasible at my situation.
Thanks, Rinto. You just brought back all those memories for me. Like I remember we have only a very few students who had a full-time job and did the full-time boot camp, but basically you sort of like watch all the recordings, right? After work,
Yeah.
and then you also do real project. That was wow,
It's a kind of
that was
tough
pretty
at the
crazy.
beginning. Yeah, it's kind of crazy at the
And,
first
I think
1 or 2 months. Yeah, but after I feel more confidence making the career switch, I quit my previous job. So to focus on the client project and job searching. So yeah, it's not a terrible experience for me at all.
cool. Let's move on. So what kind of research did you do while you search for a boot camp?
So for me, I basically looked at all the other big boot camps that offer similar programs, and I kind of reached out to alumni either through like an academic advisor at the boot camp or through LinkedIn, and just kind of spoke with them, understood what their experience was. And I also knew someone that had like made a similar career transition. So I kind of had an understanding of what I required from the bootcamp, and just ended up choosing the one that was aligned with what I was looking for at that point. So one of the reasons I didn't go with a bootcamp like Brain Station was I could see that the number of students that they take in was pretty high, and typically the post-career support that I could see even from LinkedIn or speaking with like ex-students who've done the bootcamp was just because they are such a big organization, a lot of even with WeCloudData, a lot of the outcome will be determined by how much efforts you put in. But I felt like in terms of the career support that's offered here with like the mentor as well as projects, you're not kind of left all by yourself at the end of the bootcamp. So there's this additional support that definitely helps, especially when you're like transitioning careers and transitioning fields. So that was one reason I ended up choosing them over some of the bigger boot camps, because I felt like the post boot camp support wasn't at least from my experience speaking with other people, I didn't feel it to be as strong as what was being offered here.
So on my side, so basically I read reviews, I look at the curriculum, and I look at the job placement rates for the students. The reason why I chose WeCloudData is because I'm coming from another industry, and I know that when you're looking for a job, if your resume is totally irrelevant to data science, then you would not have any chance. And even if you, let's say you go on Udemy or whatever, you learn some of the basics, you still won't have a chance because there's no projects that you're doing, there's no work experience. What caught my eye from WeCloudData was I really like the curriculum, because the curriculum was designed for like what the job market is really demanding. So whatever you learn there, you're guaranteed to be able to apply it right away. And also on your way to graduating, you will already have like portfolio projects, and also you will have the beam data experience, which will make your resume look a lot better. I think those really caught my eye. And also I read a lot of reviews on previous students, and they really talked about how they came from another industry as well. And I was like, hey, that's exactly me. So yeah, that's why I chose this. And I think Larry had a question. Oh yeah, so like the portfolio definitely helped me get an interview, because if you don't have a portfolio, you won't even get an interview, because your resume will be filtered out by AI because you don't even have anything. The portfolio helped in the sense that the hiring manager will ask you what you've done, and then you tell them about your portfolio, and they'll know that you actually have like realistic projects. Yeah, that's it.
To me, I think it's very coincidence is there's a previous student who worked with me together in the same lab, choose WeCloudData after she's graduated, and I think she did pretty good after the bootcamp. So that really gives me a lot of confidence, and I actually ask a lot of questions from her, like how her learning experience and learning path, and that's gonna be one of my biggest reason to choose WeCloudData. Another thing is I really like the client project concept, since I can put something on my resume to find a job, not like a zero experience new graduate that can make me like very few opportunities or chance to get into an interview to present myself. So yeah, I think that's the two most important reasons why I choose WeCloudData.
Cool. Next question. How much preparation did you do before joining the bootcamp? Is the pre-boot camp or whatever, fundamental skills you already know, helpful for your success in?
For me, I would say I had already like 6 months of, experience with programming. So I did transition fields, but before I went to the boot camp, so uh, yeah, it kind of depends on like an individual situation. Like I also heard from like one of the other panelists that while they were transitioning, they weren't really uh, comfortable leaving their day job as they started picking up programming. So for me, it was pretty much um, kind of a similar journey in the sense that I decided on a boot camp, dedicating full time with the goal that I wanted to land a job as soon as the boot camp was over, or I went in to the boot camp with like a certain expectation of what I wanted to achieve, and I did that when I felt I was comfortable, which is I already had some prior experience with just programming and machine learning in general. But then even in my cohort, there were a mix of students from all sorts of backgrounds with different experience with programming. So I think this would be more so depending on, different people have different expectations from the boot camp and different levels of comfort going in as well. So so for me, it was about 6 months.
For me, if you're talking about like knowledge wise, then I prepared nothing, like absolutely nothing. So I went in the boot camp without any data or coding knowledge. Because I came from like pure finance field. So the only thing I knew was Excel and just linking the cells. That's basically all I know. So no SQL, no Python, nothing. I learned everything from the boot camp.
For my case, I'm actually I was pretty nervous when I started the boot camp. So I actually prepared a few weeks before the first week of the class. What I did is I read some Python notebook to learn like some basic knowledge in Python, like what is the list, what is the dictionary, something like that, or how you're gonna write a for loop, right? Some basic knowledge. Because I have no coding experience, like zero coding experience before, so I was pretty curious, like how I'm going to do with coding. And also, I remembered I watched a few videos on Coursera. I believe it's the Andrew's machine learning classes. Basically, that gives some introduction, like what is the machine learning and how the algorithm is gonna make you like regression prediction or how to do the classification, something like that. Also like a fundamental knowledge, like for me to know what is machine learning and what I need to learn in the boot camp, so I don't like feel panic when I really goes into the boot camp. Yeah.
And Yuntao, I'm like, if I remember properly, like there was this pre-boot camp period where WeCloudData would offer us a lot of preparation courses for us to go through.
Yeah, that's correct.
I
Yeah.
I personally didn't go through it because I was working,
Um,
but those would definitely help if you watch it before going into boot camp.
Yeah, that's correct. Actually, I remember there's a Python notebook for either Python or a Pandas notebook for the pre-boot camp. And after I read those books for myself, I feel like I'm pretty confident with the pre-boot camp. Then yeah, that's why I choose keep moving out to the real class.
Oh, you can tell you definitely very well prepared for the boot camp. And Daniel, I'm curious to know how did you get stressed out like in the first few weeks of the boot camp because you basically did no preparation at all. What was it like for you?
Yes, like I actually felt like the first few courses was a little bit stressful because if I have a really short attention span, so like maybe for the first 2 hours I can focus, but then as we move into like the third or the fourth hour of the course, I would like I would blank out for like 1 minute and then I feel like I just lost track of the course. So what happens is every day I will watch the recordings and then like follow the code slowly and slowly. Um, yeah, it really helped me. So if you're not doing a lot of preparation, be prepared to do a lot of like catching up after each session.
Oh, next question. Well, I guess you guys have answered, this question, how intensive the boot camp was, the boot camp. Roughly how many hours did you spend a day or on a weekly basis on the boot camp? I guess
Yeah.
the question should be like how many additional hours you spend, because the boot camp itself is like 35, 40 hours. It's pretty standard. But how much extra effort have you put into it over the weekend or during the weekday evenings?
Yeah, so I think the extra effort is basically in terms of the portfolio projects, or in terms of the assignments also that you get as part of the coursework. So I felt that they were, for me, I personally kind of enjoy working with data. So to me personally, doesn't seem too intensive because it's something I enjoy along the way. But I would say that a couple of hours every day, or over the weekend, depending on how well you wanted to hone your projects. And these are also projects that you can upload to your GitHub as you go along, and then at the end you have at least like 4 or 5 really cool projects that you worked on. And a lot of these assignments and projects sometimes are also open-ended. So depending on how much effort you wanted to put in, you could also complete the project in an hour, versus you could make it really detailed and deep, and you could have spent like a couple of hours on it. But yeah, so I think the extra hours is mostly from the portfolio projects, or also from just basic practicing programming. It can be either on LeetCode or HackerRank, so you can practice like SQL or Python programming on the side, which are typically also asked in like job interviews.
For me, again, I have a short attention span, so I usually just spend like 1 to 2 hours, but really focused. I can say, I can like guarantee, like the more time you spend, the more additional time you spend every day, the more better you become. Like practice is really important. So the more you practice, the better you will be, like getting a job or or working on your job. Yeah.
For me, because I was working full time, so the only time if I and back then my job was on-site position, so I have to drive to the workstation, like the office. I doing that every day. So the only time I was able to learn is to watch recordings after I got home. And I choose to use like to speed up the recordings, use like 1.25 speed to watch. So, and I skip all the rest in between. So yeah, sounds kind of intense. So that takes me about 2.5 hours to finish the recordings. So I think that's all I do on the weekday. But I just leave all the assignment on weekends. And if the assignment or homework is not that much for that week, is kind of okay. Just maybe I can complete it in one day or even half day. But I think there are going to be a few projects you need to do during this the study during a few months. And for example, the portfolio project that as Roger just mentioned, and that gonna be took me like a whole weekend to do it. So yeah, that's basically my case.
Cool, thanks. And another question, we always got from the students or the potential students are, how much do you actually learn from the boot camp, like the instructors themselves, or how much did you have to sort of rely on yourself, doing all the problem solving, or when instructors are not available during the evening, you sort of have to grind through everything yourself. And I guess I can also add, like, how much did you learn from your peers?
I think because so for me, I came with some knowledge of machine learning itself. So I felt like for me, during the course, I was reinforcing a lot of the learning I already had, but at the same time, I was also learning some of the concepts in depth. So I felt like it's a pretty open platform, so you can ask a lot of questions and you can have all of your doubts cleared. And sometimes there were other students as well in my cohort, some with also prior programming experience and others who did not. So I felt like a lot of the questions that were also asked also helped me learn along the way. Apart from that, in terms of learning on my own, sometimes I would also like pick up projects or concepts that for example, during the program, I wanted to work on like a recommendation sort of a project. So I picked up this topic of collaborative filtering. The instructor also like sent me certain blog posts and articles or videos I could watch on the side and work on this project on my own. So that also helps, especially if you want to like pick up additional concepts or outside the boot camp. In terms of learning from the peers, we also presented all of the projects that we did in form of like a presentation to each other. So it was really cool that similar data sets or similar projects, different people approach it from different angles. So you kind of learn a lot. Another person might not solve the same data science problem in the same way that you're thinking. So that also gives you a perspective on how to approach a problem from different angles. Yeah, definitely having that atmosphere with other people also learning also motivates you to like keep at it, and for me it was helpful.
So for me, I kind of want to like break down the bootcamp process into two parts. So the first part would be the part where we do the lectures. And the second part would be more of the Beam data experience where we work on real life projects and the job seeking process. So in the first section where I did the courses, I basically learned 100% from the bootcamp instructors because I want to know like the basics first, because I know that what the bootcamp is offering me was the most important. So I try to focus on that first. But then as I start to work on real life projects and go through my job search, at that time, I would know what my weaknesses are and what like gaps I need to fill because I'm working on real life projects. There will definitely be times where you encounter something that you did not learn from the bootcamp. And when you're searching for jobs, if you look at a job requirement, there will definitely be things that are more niche and they require that from you. So during that time period, I would do more of like learning on my own, maybe like Udemy, Coursera, or YouTube, just kind of fill those gaps that I need for real life project and job seeking.
During the first 3 months, which is the lecture period, I learned everything from the instructors because it is hard to learn from yourself. Even sometimes you don't know what the concept is or what you don't know what you're going to learn next. And all those questions and topics are bring from the instructors. So I think I have to follow the way from the structures. But after the lecture is over and we started doing the client project, and then it becomes a lot of self-learning and the peer learning. There's a lot of conversation between my peers at that time, asking how they are doing with their project and what they learn, what tools they use back then. You also are gonna Google it a lot, like what's the solutions or what the problems you are facing or some kind of the errors you made on the notebook. You're gonna do it myself. Yeah, that's probably it.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Well, lastly, I would like to ask, like, what was your bootcamp experience like overall? You guys have said a lot of great things about us. Thank you for that. I also would like to know, like, do you think there are any things that you wish that could have been done better? Or are there anything that didn't really align with your expectation, like 100%, for example? And what's the overall experience like?
So for me, because definitely like a positive experience for me because I was able to land a job relatively quickly, like a month and a half after graduation. I kind of had an offer, and even during the process, working with my mentor, I did land a lot of interviews that for me wasn't as stressful during that period because I think it was also a little bit of the hard work I had to put in during the bootcamp, but I felt like for me it paid off. So I am, generally positive about my overall experience. And then, I think generally, like even getting into a boot camp with some programming experience, you kind of feel that a lot of concepts are also rushed. Sometimes you feel yourself not having as much time as you would like to devote to a particular concept or a topic. So I feel, for me also, like I kind of felt it through the process that I wish I had more time, but also it's kind of like a balancing act where you're learning new concepts, you're working on projects, you're improving your general programming skills, and towards the end, you're also applying for jobs. So sometimes it feels like there's too much on your plate. But then, for me, it was just, I'm happy I kind of stuck through it and, was able to transition. In terms of, the negatives, I would say can be stressful at times. It can feel like there's a lot going on, but I think that's, that's something that will come as, with something like career transition, it's kind of expected that you'll go through it.
So for me, like the bootcamp is definitely a life changer because like I was really desperate to break into data science, but then like I tried really hard like to kind of adjust and pivot my career to data science, but it's really, really tough. And I before joining the bootcamp, I was thinking like, okay, this is gonna be my last attempt to break in data science, and if this doesn't work out, I'm just gonna stick to my previous career. And the bootcamp experience was amazing for me because like I feel, I just feel like I'm learning true knowledge that can be applied right away in a work environment. There's really not a lot of theory. It's just a lot of hands-on and things that can be applied right away. And in terms of the negatives, I think this really varies from people to people. So like for me, I can't really stand long hours of learning. So like personally, if the bootcamp stretched longer, but every day there's only like 1 hour to 2 hours, that would be better for me because I get really stressed and I tend to not be able to focus. And especially like in the later topics in terms of AWS and big data, it was really, really overwhelming. I guess like the nature of that, those contents are just like really vague and hard to understand. So I had to spend a lot of time just tackling those topics. And yeah, it was quite stressful, but the overall experience was fantastic.
Yeah, I would say the same. The bootcamp experience, it would be amazing to me, and it's changed my career path successfully. And if the only thing I would regret a little bit, I would say I would like to do that with more focus, with more time with this, which is I'm probably gonna quit my previous job and do it full time, since I feel like I didn't learn very well, like some of our student in the bootcamp, because I sometimes forgot the key point that the instructors made. So I have to go back to the notebook or the videos a lot to remember myself. And in the real life work, I find out a lot of knowledge I could use in my daily work is actually something that instructor told us, but I forgot. So I think if I put more time on and practice it more during those 3 months or 6 months, I should have a better outcome. Yeah.
And just to address the questions in the chat. So Eric, he has a question regarding the master's degree. So to be really honest, like my first attempt of breaking into data science was getting a master's degree. I had a master's of finance, it's different, but I was hoping like getting a master's degree would boost my resume somehow, and I can position myself as a new grad again, and I can get like internships or whatever more easily. But the sad truth is that it's not helpful at all. So like, I'm not sure about the States or anywhere else, but in Canada, like definitely experience and like practical skills or like our portfolio projects, they're like the number one. Like that's the key. So without experience, no matter you're a master or you're a doctor, it doesn't matter. Like they're just looking at your experience and your skills. That's it. And in terms of Larry's question, I think Xiaohua would have a good answer to that. Would you like to address it? The data analytics and data science.
Yeah. The question was, are the terms data analytics and data science being used interchangeably? Aren't they different things? Yeah, they're very similar, but they're also definitely different. So I think data science is some kind of data analytics as well. It's oftentimes used interchangeably. I think this industry is changing as well. I think data scientist, today's definition of data scientist is probably different from 10 years ago, when I used to work as a data scientist. And because I think data science is becoming more specialized, if folks who are focusing more on the machine learning and AI side, there are new job titles, ML researchers, ML scientists, or ML engineers as well. And data scientists will do a lot of the experimentation, right? And they work, alongside a software team and dev team or machine learning engineering team to put models into production. So all the exploratory work and also, the experimentation in machine learning definitely are very important. But it's still some kind of analytics, data scientists will still need to do a lot of analytics, like data exploration. And sometimes you explain the models to people. And I think Rashid also mentioned like building dashboards as well, building dashboard to explain your model, because sometimes the business wouldn't necessarily understand how your models work. And then you even need to go to the extremes to build a dashboard. And these are data analytics as well. But I think the data analytics traditional sense, which is, BI or, building dashboard and doing data analysis. And these are still, under the realm of, the traditional data analytics. The way I look at it is that I think a lot of the data scientists today might become like data analysts in the future, because when tools are getting more automated and even more advanced, I think data scientists a lot of times are leveraging more powerful tools. So you don't have to write as much code as before. And you can still do a lot of the powerful analytics. And for example, predictive analytics, you can call that data analytics, but you can sort of call that, data science or machine learning as well. Yeah, so it is used interchangeably. But in the job market right now, data analyst and data scientists are still very different. But I think in the near future, a lot of what the data scientists do today might just become data analytics in the future, because the AI tools are just becoming so much more powerful, and there are a lot of automation going on as well. Even though I don't believe data scientists and data analysts job will be replaced, because I think what makes the data science job sexy, right, or important is not the coding part. I think it's the analytics part actually. The actual, the analytics, working with data and interpreting data, which is very important. I don't think ChatGPT like tools will get there anytime soon, because it's very powerful, because it's as powerful as the data you feed into this kind of generative algorithms. So it can scrape all the data from the web, which is publicly available. And that's what makes ChatGPT very powerful. It can even write some basic code for you. But it's like a junior data scientist or junior data analyst, right? But people will move on to a senior job. And the difference between a junior data scientist and senior data scientist is that the senior data scientist has seen more analytics use cases or data science use cases, and they understand the use case better. So the industry knowledge is also very important. I don't think that part is that easy to automate, because I don't think the banks will want to, for example, import all of their, the actual banking transaction and customer behavior data into, the GPT algorithms, even though, or GPT like, algorithms, because there will be serious concerns, I think. So definitely, I don't think companies will be doing this, in an open platform like ChatGPT, but I see a big demand in areas where companies want to leverage this kind of large language models or similar technologies and tailor that to their own industry use cases. So they can proprietarily apply these technologies on their own data. And I think that will be interesting, and that's probably going to create even more job opportunities for people who want to specialize in machine learning. And that's probably going to be the data scientists of the, in the future. But when, machine learning process can even be automated, I think data analytics professional will be even more empowered in the future to do more advanced analytics. So that line is definitely blurred, or going to be blurred. That's just how I look at it. In terms of data analysts using AWS day to day, I guess it really depends. AWS has the infrastructure side, and there are data analysts, who work with AWS tools like, Athena or Spark SQL. They still work with big data, but they're still just writing queries, right? They don't need to be expert in data engineering or cloud infrastructure. But yeah, so a lot of data analysts might still use, I think AWS is really just a platform for them to still run their Python code and SQL code, or Power BI is installed in AWS, right? They don't necessarily need to touch the infrastructure. What we covered in the bootcamp, I think we sort of teach students to set up EC2 instances and work with SSH and Linux, and so that's a little bit more data engineering focused, I would say. So I totally understand where Daniel was coming from, especially you have to learn so many things in a very short time period. But I think for data scientists, those skills are actually going to be beneficial. Yeah, hope that answers the question. I think we should have yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just to give some my own opinion, because we have data analysts positions on my team, and they're usually more junior compared to data scientist titles. So data scientist, I think, is more of like the in-between position. So if you move to the left, there's data analyst, and if you move to the right, there's data engineering. So I think like as you move more towards the right side, it gets way more technical in terms of like coding and the infrastructures. And if you go more to the left, it's more about like just like business sense, like presentation, coming up with visualizations and insights. So even though, like, for example, myself and Roshida were both data science titles, but I am more of the data science leaning towards the left side, where I do a lot of coding, but it's for the purpose of analytics. And I do build some models, but everything is for the purpose of analytics and gaining insights. But Roshida is more on the right side of data science, where she does way more coding and builds way more model than myself. And she's focusing more on like machine learning. So I guess data scientist, it covers a more broader range. And depending on like whether you're more analytical or more machine learning, the nature of your job can be different. But you do have to know all of these things as a data scientist.
Yeah, I was going to say that because our company uses AWS a lot. So there was like a big data project even as part of the bootcamp. So that kind of introduces you to a lot of AWS skills. So some of the tools, AWS tools that I use as part of those projects, I probably don't use the same tools at work, but a lot of other tools, they are very intuitive. So there are a lot of YouTube videos, like once you're comfortable just using AWS, there are like a lot of YouTube videos that you can watch or just read documentation online, and you can pick up new skills. So just as an example, like, at my work, even with like model monitoring, sometimes you want to like write queries, and I was assigned a task to use a Lambda function to kind of have a query that's running, and I had to like schedule that query run every few hours, and send an automated email notification if the model broke in the process. So a lot of this meant using tools like AWS Lambda, CloudWatch, and a few other tools. So a lot of it I could just watch videos online or read documentation, and I was able to like do some of the tasks myself. So once you're just comfortable with the platform, even with AWS, I feel that it's pretty intuitive. Even using like SageMaker notebooks or Lambda, it's the UI is very comfortable to use. You can use the tool that you're looking for, and even like SageMaker notebooks are very similar to like your Jupyter notebooks that you'd use otherwise. So I feel like even with like a cloud-based tool, even having that little bit of introduction as part of the bootcamp helps. And then a lot of the other necessary skills you can just pick up on the job. And even on the job, you'll see that you'll oftentimes not know a lot. So you'll have to do a lot of self-learning even on the job. Like Shawa also mentioned, sometimes even with data science, like, for example, like I mentioned, right, like there may be use cases in the company, and then, even we ourselves might not have the skills, to build something like a state-of-the-art deep learning model. So oftentimes what we do is we also just use like open source models that are available, outside, and we would just use it on our company data to create use cases for the company. So we are leveraging existing models and just using it, retraining the model on some of our company data for our use cases. So oftentimes, with all of the developments that are happening, even if you're not too comfortable with programming, or you're not, into deep learning research and development, you can still build like really interesting use cases. You can just use transfer learning. You can leverage existing models that are already open source. So definitely like that line between, even data science and like ML engineer at this point, I would say is kind of starting to blur. Yeah, I think that just something from my perspective.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. I still have a couple more questions, but I think at this point maybe it's better to open can open it up and let everyone ask more questions. I feel like this kind of interactivity is probably better. And I do see some really good questions. So we're going to pause all the questions here. And if the audience has any other questions, please feel free to ask. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask as well, or you can send the message to the meeting chat. Well, thanks, Larry. I can keep asking some questions. I was actually curious about like your job search experience, right? So Roshida, you mentioned that you got a job within a month and a half. That was actually quite amazing because I don't think everyone in the boot camp get a job that fast. Sometimes we do have students who get a job like even during the boot camp. That's very rare because most of the student will decide to focus on the boot camp. And it seems to work out pretty fast for you. And also Daniel and Wintal, I'm also curious to know like what your job search experience were like, and how long did it take you guys to get a job, and how many interviews have you got? Want to share some experience?
Yeah, so I think I had like a handful of interviews. I might have had like 10 interviews or so. Some was in the process of interviewing when I landed my job. I felt like a lot of interviews. I started getting the interviews solely based on how my resume was structured. So I kind of started applying for jobs even before the boot camp ended, and I noticed that at that point I wasn't really getting any interview calls. And then I spent almost a week, did 3 or 4 different resume revisions with my mentor. I could myself see like the difference in quality is, the resume before and after. I had, my mentor sessions, and then, I felt like, I started getting more interviews once my resume was updated with inputs. It could even be possible that, I was using the right keywords. If there's an AI that's filtering out resumes, maybe I was passing all this, checks eventually. But then I think the first step would be just to get an interview call. So the resume is like, you have to like spend time on the resume. Otherwise it's just wasted efforts at that point. With interviews, typically like, so there are like 3 or 4 interviews is pretty standard. If it's a bigger company, you might even have more rounds of interviews. So the first interview is pretty much just like an HR interview. And then you might have like a call with like a hiring manager. And the third interview could just be like a take-home assignment. So I had some interviews where I got a take-home assignment. I had a couple of days or a week to work on it and submit it. Others are mostly just programming interviews where you like share your screen and code out depending on what is being asked. So it could be either like simple Python questions or SQL questions at that point. And then the fourth interview is typically an explanation of the work that you've done, or it can be another technical interview. And then that's typically the process. If it's like a bigger company, I think you might have like a dedicated 40-45 minutes programming round, but that I think those are pretty difficult to crack. So even for me, even though I wasn't like, I got the initial interviews at some of the bigger companies, but I knew that my programming wasn't really up to mark at that point to crack those interviews. But most of the other data science companies, you might just have like a take-home assignment, which is very similar to like, a portfolio project that you work on at that point. So so I think, just knowing what to expect with the interview process also kind of helps you understand what needs to be done or how you must go about the interview process. And I think my mentor also helped me with it. So I did mock interviews, both soft skills as well as technical interviews with him. So that was also helpful.
So for me, to be honest, I forgot like how long it took me to get the job, but it should be around 3 months. Um, so after the course, after the lectures ended, I started to work on real life projects with Beam Data, and then I probably worked there for like 3 months while doing my job searches, and then I landed in my job. In terms of interviews, I probably had like around 30 interviews in total. In the early stages, you won't get a lot of interview because you're just starting to send out resumes, but just aim for like 5 to 10 applications every day. And then like in the later, like in the second months, I start to get a lot of interviews. I remember near like in the later stages, I will have like one interview every day in a week. So I guess the key is to build a good resume. Um, like if you're getting a lot of phone calls, that means your resume is good. But if you're not getting the offer, that means you probably have to really like focus on building your interview skills. And I think the mentors did a really good job on helping me with the mock interviews, helping me write the resume. Um, uh, in terms of like the interview process, I guess it really depends on what positions you apply for. So if you apply for like a really technical position, you would probably have to expect like a few rounds of coding or take home projects, things like that. Um, but I didn't apply to those really technical positions. I applied more to like analytical positions. So they focus more on your business sense and your like your more of your soft skills, I guess. I still got technical interviews though, where I had to do some lead coding questions, but it won't be as intense as like take home projects or whatever. Yeah, that's it.
My first job is actually getting pretty smooth. I think it's just 1 month after the course is over while I'm doing my real client project. I one day saw in um actually the instructor post job positions on the Slack chat, which is the chat we usually communicate with the class. The instructor usually communicate with the class. I saw there's they said they are hiring like 2-3 people from StatsCan, and that's why I just sent my resumes and got the interview and actually got my first job. So that process is pretty smooth. I didn't really that's my first interview actually after the course. I think that's the one of the advantage I want to mention is WeCloudData has a lot of graduates are doing pretty success in their career, and those connections, those network can help you to landing your first job, and that's what I'm experienced at least. So yeah, not much to say to that interview, but I can talk a little bit after for my second interview, which got me into the Scotiabank. That is I remember it's like 3 or 4 rounds interview. I think I talked to HR, talked to manager, and getting a take-home assignment for writing a presentation to explain the business situation or business cases, and then present that presentation to the group. I think it's pretty challenging, I would say, and it's the first time I have experienced data science interviews, since my first one doesn't really count. And I remembered I did like in the manager around, she asked me a few questions, like coding questions that I have to type the result in the Teams chat. That is yeah, it is pretty challenging because you don't have those like IDEs to give you some instructors like instructions when you're having an error. So what they do, I believe they copy paste my code and try to run it afterwards. So yeah, that is and also she asked me a few statistic questions and machine learning questions, and some data scientist questions, and yeah, that's pretty much about it. So yeah, overall speaking, my job searching experience pretty smooth.
Oh, thanks for sharing your experience. Yuntal, your first job was through a referral, right? So it was pretty straightforward. Was that the
Yes,
case?
yes, yeah. I believe it's you sending that message to the Slack chat, and actually I talked to the person who referred me in the status can. It's called Celio. We
Oh,
still have
Julio, yeah.
connections right now. Yeah, we had chat once a month or bi-weekly just to share our recently things, and I believe it was yeah, I think back then his manager was asking him if he has a few good reference or candidates for a position in StatsCan, and he said, well, he graduated from WeCloudData and he has known someone who has data science background and will like good for the position. And he basically referred like 3 people, and that's all from WeCloudData, and I'm pretty lucky to be the one got into StatsCan.
Cool. There are a couple of questions. One is the job market good for data science at this time? Can we expect as many interview calls as 1 or 2 years back? And the next question is, do we need a degree in data science apart from bootcamp to get a job, or only bootcamp can help get a job?
So I can probably take the second question. The first one, I'm not really sure. I kind of depends on the market. So I don't think it was, there were any layoffs or anything at the time that I was interviewing. So maybe, it was a slightly better time for me back then. But for the second one, I feel that more so than like having a degree definitely helps because but at the end of the day, companies kind of just hire people who are able to do the job more so than someone who has a degree. So even if you have a degree, but if you're not able to clear the interviews, or if you're not able to answer the questions or do the assignments or projects to a satisfactory level, you would still not land that job. So if you're landing an interview, it kind of just depends on you, how much work you put in, and your performance in the interview. That's going to guarantee whether you land that job or not. And to get that interview, you need to have like a good resume. And for the resume, like we all discussed, you need certain keywords, you need some projects, you need to show that you have some skills. And I feel like once you break into data, once you have a certain job experience, it no longer matters. Maybe in a year or 2 years of working in the industry, it no longer matters what you did in the past. Like your education becomes less relevant, and what matters more is that are you upskilling yourself? Are you keeping up with the latest technology? And what kind of projects that you worked on, and the kind of or what kind of industry are you specializing in? Because you'll also see that once you progress, you need to have more so of a domain knowledge. So if you're in finance, or if you have like banking experience, you can grow in that field. If you're more of a generalist, with time you can also start to find a certain industry niche segment, because you've seen a lot more use cases in that industry or segment. Yeah.
Maybe I can talk a little bit on the first question. I don't really know for sure how's the market going, but I do know the fact that for our team, after I joined Scotiabank, I think I joined at August last year. Our team still hiring like 3 more data scientists to our team, which is similar, like close to my age. Someone is just new graduate, someone has like 1 or 2 years working experience. So at least for my team, I don't see that it's slowing down.
Yeah, I think last year and this year, definitely the job market got affected by the tech job cuts, especially the big tech companies. But I think the traditional businesses are doing well. So they're definitely still growing. In the banks, they have hiring freezes, but just like any banks, they always have hiring freezes on a regular basis. Um, the market is definitely uncertain. I would say more uncertain. Yeah, I just heard that Facebook also cut another 10,000 or 6,000 jobs. So right now, in the market, it's not that there's not enough jobs. It's just like there are more people competing, more experienced people competing, and that's why I think for junior level, talents, it becomes a little bit tougher to get interviews. I think that's what we're experiencing right now. Yeah. But I think as long as you have a strong portfolio and also some hands-on project experience, you will still definitely get interviews. Just my take on this. There's another question: do we need to have expertise in a domain for becoming a data scientist? So this will be the last question. Maybe I can answer this question. I think domain knowledge is definitely useful. Like just based on what I heard today, I think Daniel, for example, he got a lot of interviews. I think one of the reasons is probably because he I think he even did a master of finance. So you definitely are interested in joining the banking industry. So your job search might be a little bit more tailored to the banking financial services industry. Correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong. But
So I have like a finance and banking background. Like I think like 70-80% of the job I'm applying, they're related to like banking or finance
you
somehow.
have a
Yeah.
focus. Yeah, so that definitely helps. So I think domain knowledge is always, useful. But it doesn't mean you need to have worked in that industry, right, in order to get the domain knowledge. I think a lot of times, like when you go to interviews, you can do a lot of research, and you can learn industry knowledge, very quickly. But of course, like if you don't work in that industry, like what you can learn based on what you can find on the internet or reading some articles or research, it's definitely different. But I would say data science skills are very transferable. If you have pretty strong like technical skills, you should be able to find jobs in many industries. However, there are definitely industries that ask for very specific knowledge. For example, if you work, in natural resources or mining industry, having that kind of knowledge will definitely be helpful. But it doesn't mean that they only hire people who have the industry knowledge, because they're always looking for people who specialize, for example, in computer vision, and they can always learn the business knowledge. And a lot of times for data scientists, it's actually just learn how to work with the data set and the type of data in a very specific industry. But I think you definitely don't need to have, for example, you definitely don't need a CFA certification in order to work as a data scientist in a bank, for example, right? But yeah, so when you choose like your portfolio project to work on, definitely choose the projects in different domains. Like if you need to work on 3 to 4 projects, try to diversify the projects you work on. And because every time you work on a data set that's coming from a specific industry, it's an opportunity to learn more about that industry as well. Cool. I think that's it for tonight's session. We spent about an hour and a half, and did this Q&A and also panel discussion. Big thanks for 3 of our alumni who found their success in the last year or two, and I'm very happy about the progress you guys made in your career, and very proud that WeCloudData played some role in in your journey, and so happy to see you guys coming back and helping us with panel discussion and share knowledge with the audience. So yeah, I look forward to seeing more future successes from you guys. And for the audience tonight, thanks for the great questions, a lot of good questions, and I hope you guys find this session useful. And the recordings will be available later. And yeah, and I hope everyone have a great evening, and we'll be in touch.